Welcome to day 3 of our online open days. During this session, we're going to be presenting our bachelor program, our master's programs, and then also sharing some experiences about studying at St. Ignatius. So we're going to be talking both about the structure of the programs, and we also have the opportunity to speak with 2 students to discuss their experiences of what it's like studying at the on these programs. My name is Serafim Smensgård. I'm the academic coordinator for the Department of Eastern Christian Studies at EHS, and I also work at St. Ignatius Folkhögskola, where I'm the deputy rector of the Byzantine Seminary. We're going to talk a little bit about how the relationship between the academic program and the folk high school programs as we progress. I would also like to present our deputy dean, or our dean of the Department of Eastern Christian Studies at EHS and dean of St. Ignatius Folkhögskola, Michael Hjälm. And we have 2 students. We have Adel and Aregay. So I would like you to maybe present yourself in a little bit more detail. We can begin with Michael.
Thank you so much. And as Serafim said, I'm the Dean of the Department for Eastern Christian Studies at Stockholm School of Theology, which is part of Enskilda Högskolan Stockholm in Sweden. I'm also the Dean of Sankt Folkhögskola, which is also the school that provides professional support for the academic programs, and which is also housing the various seminaries. We have a Kebede seminary consisting of Ethiopians and Eritreans. We have a Syriac Orthodox seminary. We have a Coptic Orthodox seminary, and we have a Byzantine Orthodox seminary with various nationalities. So that's shortly my introduction.
Thank you, Michael. Then I would ask Sally to briefly present herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sally. I belong to the Coptic Orthodox Church. I have joined St. Ignatios for 4 or 5 years ago. I got my bachelor degree last year, and I continue to study my master's this year.
Thank you, Sally. And also Aregay, if you could briefly present yourself.
Okay, thank you, Father, for the opportunity. My name is Aregay Kebede, and I am pursuing my second year study at Sankt Ignatios College, and also studying the Religious Educator program. And I belong to the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, and currently I'm staying at the Ethiopian and Eritrean Tewahedo Orthodox Seminary in Tislinge.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'm very happy that we have the opportunity to have both a thorough explanation of the programs, but also the student perspective. What's it actually like to study in this special combination of different kinds of education, which is something I'm going to ask Michael to explain in a second. First, I'm going to briefly just give an outline of this session. We will begin by discussing the bachelor program for about 40 minutes, and then move on to the master's program. And after that, there will be an opportunity to ask questions. This session is being recorded. So if you need to switch off the video, that's fine. Also, if you know of people who are interested in this and who have not been able to attend the live session, this is going to be made available online for reference later. So I'd like to start actually by asking you, Michael, this combination of types of education, if you could speak a little bit more about that. What's so unique about these programs and the way that we collaborate between these different forms of education?
We have two parts in our professional degrees. For those studying for becoming a priest or a teacher in a church, they study the so-called Pastoral-Pedagogical program, which consists of two parts. One part is done at the Folkhögskola or the seminaries. There we have a practical liturgical training, we have a pastoral training, we have a leadership training, we have a languages, classical language, we both have Slavonic, Syriac, we have Ge'ez, the Ethiopian Eritrean language, we have Coptic, and we have Greek, and we have Slavonic. And the other side, it's the academic part, which leads to a Bachelor in Theology with a special orientation towards Eastern Christian studies. And we cover all range of traditions within the Bachelor. And we are organized the program based on the sources of Eastern Christian traditions. And we have organized the sources according to the classical tradition. In the Ethiopian and Eritrean tradition, they talk about Arataina, that the church has four sources, Arataina, or four eyes of, or Arba Ayun in Arabic, which simply is organized based on the idea that the first source are the sacred scriptures, which is not just the Old and New Testament, but all the sacred scriptures that Christianity was given birth around. And secondly, we have the patristic sources. That's the interpretations of this first horizon of the church, the birth horizon of the church. And then thirdly, we have a source that we use every day and every week and every year in our traditions. That means the liturgical life, the texts, but not just the text. The performance in the room also is part of a source of the liturgical source, let's say. And fourthly, we have the church itself, its regulations, its organization, and everything around the church, which constitutes the four aspects of Eastern Christian tradition, which is classically called four sources or four eyes. These two perspectives, the academic and the seminar perspectives, they create two things that merge together the future leaders of a church. On one hand, the seminary education is formative. It creates a person. It creates a leader. On the other hand, or a teacher. On the other hand, the academy breaks down misconceptions and myths that have oriented between the churches, that has created schism and division, which you break down through academic research and thorough studies into the sources. That amounts to a kind of vision that we follow the ancient saying of Saint Ephraim the Syrian. Truth and love are inseparable from each other. Love means for us leadership. The Christian value of love is important for how to be a Christian leader. That's done in the seminaries. But truth, to reveal what has been said in history, what the sources are actually saying, and interpreting the sources, so we come closer to the horizon of truth. That's our perspective. And that's how we constructed our education for future priests and teachers of our communities. Back to Serafim.
Thank you. Then, given that we have these two different forms of education, or this merging of these two different branches of our education, what are some of the pedagogical implications, how we approach learning in these two different environments?
In both cases, we have a student-oriented approach in our studies. It's not the book that is in the center. It's not even the source that is in the center. In the center, in both forms, we have a student. It's the student's learning abilities and the learning outcomes that comes with the studies that are in focus. The skills and competence and knowledge of a student. that we try to enhance, shape, and formate. The difference pedagogically is that in the seminaries, it's very much a cooperation between the students and the teacher. It's a dialogue. We are forming the knowledge together. It's not something that the teacher owns. It's something that we create together. And this collective way of enabling the students to develop is very important. That's how they will work in the parishes, in the dioceses, and even in the patriarchates. While in the academic part, it's very much to liberate the students, to come closer to the sources, so that they can read the sources on their own, so they can interpret the sources on their own. And in the end, in the higher levels, be fully independent from the teachers. So two approaches with the same source, the student as a kind of common approach between both academic studies and seminary studies.
Thank you. Also, one thing which is unique to this program is that it's an environment which is inter-Orthodox. How does the program balance the interests of the different churches, and how are you able to combine an education which meets the needs of the different traditions under the same program?
First, we have two things that we have to keep in mind when we are reflecting on the mosaic of various Christian traditions, not just the Orthodox, but also other traditions like the Catholics and evangelical traditions, is that all and every one of the traditions have its specific perspective. All these perspectives are interested in understanding the full picture of Christianity. If you think about one piece of a mosaic, you won't get a face, but many pieces of a mosaic will create a face, an image. And when it comes to the Orthodox churches, it's a self-evident understanding that no particular tradition owns the full picture. Full picture is given to the variety of traditions. It's when we mirror our own traditions in the other traditions that we get a fuller picture, a broader image, a clearer image, a better image. At the same time, each tradition has its own depth, its own particularity, its own identity. And this is how studies when it comes to the inter-Orthodox perspective is done in a school like ours. We work both with the identity that is formative, what does it mean to be an Ethiopian Orthodox? But what does it mean to be an Orthodox if I compare it with other Orthodox traditions? What does it mean to be divided from another church? Is it a real division? And if it's a real division, how will I handle it when I reflect upon my own position? The inter-Orthodox and the inter-Christian, even the inter-religious perspective that we offer in our education creates the possibility of a dialogue with the surrounding world. It means that we can move out from our own house to a more broader field without losing the perspective of our own house, so to say.
So this would be a good opportunity to turn to the student's perspective. And I'm going to ask you both to comment on this, but we can begin with Sally. Now, given that you've completed your Bachelor and you've had a few years of experience here, looking back, how have you experienced this meeting of Orthodox traditions? Coming from a Coptic tradition and then studying in an environment where you are exposed to and learn together with people from other Orthodox traditions and also study other Orthodox traditions?
Well, it has definitely broadened my mind, because before learning, you come with a kind of prejudice to school. And there are many traditions with a small t that you get to learn and identify them or distinguish them from the tradition with a bigger T. And then all of a sudden your mind gets broadened, that you're not the only church, or you are not alone. You have a wider society and wider definitions, and definitely changes the person's perspective about Orthodoxy and Christianity. And the good thing that I still have my papers since the first thesis that I've written from the first year and the second year. I always keep them and read them all the time to see how much I developed as a student in St. Ignatios. So I can definitely like draw a graph line that shows that I've changed, and I think that I've been developed as a person and as a Christian in the community.
Could you share some of those thresholds with us, where we see a clear progression between the years, and what kind of progression you're talking about?
Well, my first paper, which is like a bad memory, it's like when the person is just focused about himself or herself. So it just shows from them that the person just speaks out of his own. I spoke out of my own perspective, and I was completely disengaged with all the other perspectives around me. And then with the second and the third year, I learned that it's not just me, there's the other that I have to encounter and take into consideration. And then with as a year forward, that I started even to learn how to deal not only with persons, but also, or to take in considerations the other. I also learned how to handle the sources and how to think broader and even move a step forward to become even a scholar one day.
Thank you. Aregay, staying with this theme then, given that going into the future, as we're training a younger generation of priests and servants of the church, carrying this particular tradition into the future is very important. Of course, we need to keep the liturgical languages and do you think that it's been a compromise studying together in this way? How have you been able to focus on your perspective? Does it entail a dilution of perspectives, or what would you say?
Thank you for the opportunity once again. Before delving into the bulk of my personal experience explanation, I would like to mention how thankful I am for the existence of the college for many reasons, and connecting this to the question theme that you raised, Father. The first and the major reason is the institution, in my personal opinion, is exemplary for all Christian, for all Eastern and Oriental Orthodox churches and other institutions, in showing how one can work for unity when in fact our churches are not united. And what excited me, what excited me the most about this sense of togetherness is the mechanism adopted to bring the unity, which is through the exploration of our ancient faith while testifying its feasibility and applicability in the modern world. And that's what I have found by studying together with my fellow brothers from other Orthodox traditions, and specifically the course that are given in the folk high school level, which I took with my fellow brothers, provided me the opportunity to share my own tradition and also to learn about the perspective of other tradition. And in my personal opinion, the end goal of both, the end goal of all of the tradition perspective is the same. So it didn't create any dilution, or it didn't create any kind of confusion. But in the other hand, it helped me understand the perspective of other tradition, and it helped me compare and contrast with mine, and be able to understand that we are all striving to a very common goal. So that is what I experienced. And in line with this, I would like to take this opportunity also to express my gratitude for those who have played an immense role in establishing this institution. And that was my particular experience when it comes to studying with others who belong to other Orthodox tradition.
Thank you so much. Michael, could you explain a little bit more in depth the actual organization, how these things fit together? What can a student expect practically from the programs? Forms of study, timetables, how are these pieces integrated?
In each level, the 4 perspectives of the 4 sources, biblical studies, patristic studies, liturgical studies, and ecclesiological studies, reappear during the 3 years at the bachelor level in an increased complexity. For example, if you take biblical studies, it starts with, the classical way of studying the Bible. Then it moves towards hermeneutics, and then it moves furthermore and makes a kind of integration between patristic studies and biblical studies, what we call patristic exegesis, how the church fathers and how the later church interpreted the Bible. So it's an increased complexity that is concerned for the bachelor program. And we can follow the same track for each source during the bachelor. On the other hand, the student belongs to a community of people that are sharing the spiritual sources in each seminary if he chooses to study a professional program. Professional program means that he or she is supposed to serve a church. And for example, you can belong to a Tewahedo seminary, meaning that you're belonging to an Ethiopian Eritrean seminary, where you have your prayers, where you have a formative training, where you have your community, and this kind of aftermath of all courses, the real discussions takes place in these seminaries. And the students are encouraged on higher and higher levels. The discussions within the seminaries become more advanced, more directed, more clear. And hopefully the students will experience this during the years, that the seminary provides not just a home, but also a continuation of their studies in the community. So the school offers both a kind of spiritual training in the seminaries and an academic training at the academy. And that's a combination that makes the professional programs very unique.
And what then is the difference between the professional program and the bachelor program?
The bachelor program doesn't provide any kind of spiritual formation or any kind of spiritual practice that is introduced to the students. If you study the bachelor program, you're studying the Eastern Christian traditions as an object. You don't need to consider yourself as a Christian. You can be an atheist, you can be a believer, you can be someone who's pious. It doesn't matter, because in the bachelor, we are more interested of understanding the sources, understanding what people have said through the centuries of church history. And that's a challenge for many students, to meet people that have various beliefs, but united in the study of the Eastern Christian tradition. That's another broadening experience for the students, to meet the secular society, but still a secular society interested in deeper studies of the Eastern sources.
We have what's called the Pastoral-Pedagogical program. We have these two words, pastoral and pedagogical. Why is the pedagogical aspect emphasized in our programs?
Basically, students choose whether they would like to become priests or deacons, serving church as pastoral leaders, or if they choose to become teachers within the communities. most of them that studies for the pedagogical part of this program often end up as scholars in them. So that's a track that is most useful for future scholars. The important thing for those who choose to study the professional degrees, even if they don't aim at serving the church, they get the languages and they get the pedagogics and they get also the rhetorics, meaning that they are trained as teachers for the future, which will also help them as scholars if they want to aspire the higher levels of education, master and a PhD.
And what is the outlook career-wise for those who are not specifically going into the ministry, but would like to study Eastern Christian studies?
You can study this program as part of your training as a teacher. So gymnasium teachers, for example, in Sweden, can study this program. They have to add some parts during the program. That's possible to do within the Bachelor in our program. And also it provides also access to higher studies, not just in theology, but in humanities at large. So it's possible to move forward to a broader scale of courses and programs after finishing up with our Bachelor. When it comes to the other part, the pastoral part, it's a huge need of more priests. In Sweden, we are talking about a complete generation that has to be educated, because most of the priests are very old in Sweden. That counts for most of European countries also. We have a very aged leadership in the churches. Therefore, we really need a new generation of priests for the future. So that's with the best opportunities.
If we then look at the other track, those who are called to serve in the church, why would we emphasize the need for advanced academic studies for people going specifically into the priesthood? What is the reason for the emphasis also on academic rigor there?
In religion, myths are recreated along the line of our church history. But myths doesn't provide the truth as we think it provides. If you take, for example, various myths that have been created around schism, for example, they have to be torn down, disseminated, observed, and sometimes also reconstructed to see what's behind these myths. Doubting what you have heard, doubting what you have read, doubting what you believe to be true is a very important part of progression in a society. It's how democracy works. If you just reproduce what you hear in newspapers or in magazines, you will be part of myth making, which will hurt other people. It's the same in Christian tradition. We need to discern what is relevant, or as Sally said, what is a tradition with a capital T? What are traditions with minor T's? What can be abandoned? What cannot be abandoned? What will hurt us as a community? What will provide divisions? What can unify us? Without a properly trained mind, we cannot discern these things. And to be a servant of a church, of providing a leadership and support of a people, without that critical mind that is needed in order to avoid unnecessary divisions, to avoid hurting people, that's what higher learning is providing for our future generation of priests, bishops, deacons, and of course also teachers.
It sounds like a little bit of an uncomfortable ride, and I'm wondering, maybe I can start with Aregay. Confronting doubt is not just an intellectual situation. It's something which engages us, which really means that we need to reevaluate things. How how is the experience of going through this cycle of progression, and do you feel that you have had the support you need to be able to deal with these challenges as you're learning?
Yeah, I would say this is one of the tough and at the same time one of the most interesting part of studying at the college, specifically studying the academic courses. They forced me question myself a lot of times along the path, and many times I would personally say that the output were really great, and I thanked myself for questioning the belief, the understanding, and the information I had before delving into the content of that specific course portion. And it is always, during the first few times, it is a bit difficult to adopt what you had studied or what you had known before, but the output is very transformational. And in this aspect, the aid and the help that we gain from the teachers plays an immense role in this regard. For example, I can remember from the biblical study course of mine, I've never approached the Bible that way. I've never questioned such kind of difficult questions when it comes to the Bible. But finally, the output or the result that I gained by asking those questions and by processing the thoughts that I had and by processing the new perspective that I had learned helped me identify my position, helped me realize the benefit of asking such kind of questions. And speaking of the role of the teachers, they pointed out the paths and the paths that one can follow. And as they say, clarity comes from engagement. They provided the opportunity to deal with different kinds of perspectives. And during that specific process, they shared their own personal experiences as well, how they approached that kind of questions when they were facing those questions. Instead of imposing their attitude, they tend to pave the path for us to question, to dig deep, and finally to shape our own attitude. It was a very tough ride, but very rewarding experience, I would say.
Thank you, and I think it's an important experience, because going into ministry, either directly in the church or in the role of a teacher, this is part of what our students are going to meet as they engage people in learning environments. The same process which our students go through in some way, people in our parishes will be going through. So Sally, it's easy to question, it's easy to call into doubt, but it's not so easy to build up. What has your experience been of confronting this progression and combining this intellectual challenge with the personal dimension of what you're learning? And is there anything you would take with you in your role as an educator going forward?
Well, I'll also start from, in order to proceed to answer the question, I will start from like how healthy doubt is, because I come from an interreligious community, which is Egypt, and in a minority church, if you're not exposed to doubt and questioning, you become enclosed and you become scared to answer or to face the outside society and get exposed to questions, and then this becomes other consequences. So when I came to school and I found out that it's okay to have doubt, and it's okay to ask questions, and it's okay to look for answers, and it's okay to be questioned also. I thought that this makes us more confident in our faith as we build up or as we have a broader understanding. It makes us not so scared or defensive about those who question us or expose us to challenges. So it just makes us as, or it made me as a Christian, that it's okay to be in the society. It's okay that if I have myself started, as Aregay said that to doubt myself. So I have been accepting that the others are doubting me, and like this becomes more peaceful arguments and better mutual understanding of the other in general, I would say.
Do you feel equipped to meet these challenges going forward?
Of course, I would say that, and not only equipped, but this eagerness and this that the growth is never ends. It's just like you feel that you need to grow more and you need to learn more. It's like that if the first year is not enough, you have to go forward to the bachelor, and the bachelor is not enough, you have to go forward for a master. Just like this love of knowing just grows by every year as you continue.
Thank you so much, both Aregay and Sally, for really sharing of your own experiences. I might point out that neither Aregay nor Sally originally from Sweden or have Swedish as their primary language. Of course, you've learned Swedish along the way. We are an institution based in Sweden, but as I think we've already shown here, our perspective is very broad. So coming back to some of the more practical aspects of studying here, if people from other countries in the European Union or beyond the European Union are interested in studying at St. Ignatius, what are some of the implications for international students when it comes to living in Sweden? Can you start studying online and continue your education? What are the conditions which might help people who are interested from other countries to study? If Michael, if you could answer.
Yes, we provide the assistance for students coming from abroad, then they would like to study here in Sweden. We provide also some scholarships for students outside the European Union, but there are very few scholarships at the moment. But we provide housing for all students during the first 2 years in the professional degree programs for the Pastoral-Pedagogical program, but also in the program for religious educators. And we have physical buildings for all seminaries. In Södertälje, we have a building for the Tewahedo seminaries, the Ethiopian and Eritrean seminaries. We have a building for the Byzantine Orthodox seminary. We have a building for Syriac Orthodox seminary. And we have a school center today, which is located directly in the city center of Södertälje, with the offices and the facilities for education. We also provide assistance in relation to the migration authority for students coming to Sweden. But most of important is the European Union as such. If you're a member or a citizen of a European Union country, then it's no challenge to move to Sweden. Today, there's a freedom of movement in Europe, which makes it so easy to study here in Sweden for all citizens of the European Union. And that makes it simple for most of our students.
What are some of the advantages of studying in Sweden compared to some of the other options in the world? If you're going to move from your country, then, I mean, there are other options, for example, studying in the United States. So what are some of the advantages of studying in Sweden?
There's two different worlds that we're addressing. If you want to serve in Europe, we provide a European context for the studies. But if you want to serve in America, then this school becomes a kind of European cradle. You know, if you want to get to know Europe, Sweden is very much part of Europe today. But also, Sweden is a society that provides a kind of, let's say, comfortable role model for what it means to be in a country that has passed through a century without any major wars. It's quite safe and quite comfortable to study in Sweden. And that's important for having a, let's say, comfort position in your studies. This is a country that you can relax while you're studying, especially if you want to go back to more difficult circumstances. This provides a relaxed position in Europe.
What about tuition fees in Sweden?
For all citizens of the European Union, there are no tuition fees. That's also part of the European Union agreement. It means that you study for free here, like Swedes also study for free. So you don't need pay tuition fees. For non-European Union citizens, there are fees. And if you can't get a scholarship, but the fees are in comparison with the rest of the world, not higher. They are more average, even lower than most of other countries that you can choose on.
And let's say that one has embarked on theological studies already and then has become interested in studying Eastern Christian studies. If you have started maybe studying in another tradition or at another institution, another Orthodox institution, is it difficult to switch over to get those credits counted towards your degree? Is there anything one needs to think about specifically there?
We have a student office that handles the transfer of credits and the recognition of credits from our universities and our schools. We also admit students based on real competence, meaning that we can also recognize that they have enough competence that will suffice for a certain amount of credits. So students that have questions about it should make contact with our student office, and we will help them and guide them how they will be able to recognize their credits in our school.
And how are these degrees recognized in the wider academic world and also in the wider Orthodox world?
First of all, our seminaries are part of the Orthodox world. It means that they are related to bishops in the Orthodox Church. So each seminary has a bishop that is responsible for seminaries. So thereby it's part of the Orthodox network of Orthodox local churches around the world. Secondly, a bachelor, a master, and doctoral degree in our school belongs to the European Union system. It means that we are part of a so-called Bologna system with all recognitions and also state recognition here in Sweden. So it means that it has both recognition churchly and the civil society recognition.
And if somebody chooses to study in this program, does it mean they can automatically be ordained in the church upon completion?
No, ordination belongs to the church. We provide education. Ordination is something that you apply for in your church, but we provide the education that most of the churches require for prior to ordination. That's.
And in the opposite scenario, do you need if you're a member of the Orthodox Church, do you need the blessing of your local priest or your bishop in order to enroll in our programs?
No, we don't require any kind of blessing prior to enrollment in our programs. We don't investigate the background of the students in that case. Instead, we make our own evaluations. When you pass the Pastoral-Pedagogical program and you have chosen to do it as what we call a priest candidate, you will have a letter of recognition that we have done it and that we have found that there's no obstacles for any kind of ordination, but the actual ordination is taken by the church.
We're going to move on to speaking a little bit more about the seminaries, but before I bring in the student perspective, I'm wondering, the seminary structure makes sense if you're specifically called to serve in the church, and you're going to go through the formation for the priesthood or diaconate. But if you're not going to be ordained, or if you're not eligible to be ordained to the priesthood, what is the role of the seminary then? If you're a student who's interested in studying these programs, but you're not going to be a priest or a deacon, is the seminary relevant for you then? Or is it even open to you then?
The three things that are important in relation to the seminaries. First is that even if you're not the priest candidate, to live and enroll yourself in the life of the seminary means that you have a chance to develop as a human being. There you will have the necessary connections with other people, thinking about the career in the church or another way of being in the church in the future. It provides you with a context and the community that makes you grow. That's an important aspect of education, and we even require that you live in a seminary during the first 2 years for priest candidates, just because it's so important that you have this perspective, this dimension of community, so to say. The second thing that is important with the seminary is that they provide the community or the community for the students also, even if they're not directly living in the seminary. They exist like a kind of nation within our school. So the Tebehedo seminaries for Ethiopian Eritreans, for example, they provide also the context and the so-called anchor towards their individual traditions. It's the same with the Syriac community and the Coptic community as the seminaries. Thirdly, it's a kind of opportunity to enroll in a great feast, to have fun also. So the seminaries provide a little bit of fun also, and relax from all the difficult studies. They can do things that you wouldn't be able to do on your own, but together with your friends, it becomes more interesting for your life in the school.
Thank you. So I think this would be a good opportunity then to ask Aregay more specifically, what does daily, weekly life at the seminary actually entail practically?
I will answer this question from two directions. The first one from courses point of view, and the other one from the practical life point of view. The folk high school courses, or the courses which are delivered in the seminary, will give the opportunity, and particularly it has given me the opportunity to immensely immerse myself in my own tradition, and I managed to expand my knowledge and awareness. And in addition to that, there is a strong connection with our local parishes, with our local churches, and I have the opportunity of going to the church and serving the church, and that is one of the interesting feature of the seminary that I cherish the most. And also in our seminary, specifically in the Fkadu seminary, there are students who are like completely studying the church traditions. For example, the program of Agwakwam, or the program to be a deacon, and the program to be a priest. And also there are other students who are taking the theological courses, which is the religious educator or the pedagogical courses. And this integration helped us to motivate each other and also to take insights from one another. And this part of some sort of academic environment helped us enrich our experience immensely. And also, speaking of the daily practical life, one of the major part of the daily activity is the prayer indeed. We pray 3 times a day, during the morning, and during late afternoon, and during the night. And when we conduct prayer, it is not like individually based prayer. Instead, we do that in group. We all gather in our prayer room and pray 3 times a day. And during the night, we chant the praise of Saint Mary, which is composed by Saint Ephraim. And during the days, we also have readings during the prayer, and also other forms of prayer. And this in addition to enriching the prayer experience of the student, it also helps the students to enhance the bond of togetherness, and also to enhance the brotherly fellowship that exists in the seminary. The other part of practical aspect of the seminary is, of course, the fact that we eat together, we cook the meal together, and that also, in other direction, enhance the interaction of the seminarians greatly. And eating together is also one of the interesting activity that is constantly taking place in the seminary. And from physical point of view, so far I had mentioned the spiritual and the relational point of view. From the physical point of view, I would say our seminary particularly is located in a very interesting place, and the nature surrounding our seminary is very, very good. And we tend to walk together with my fellow brothers, and that had given me the opportunity to discuss while walking as well. So the benefit is twofolded. So we can see it from 4 directions in general: spiritually, relationally, intellectually, and physically. The living in the seminary had helped me improve my life significantly, and I highly recommend the prospective students to at least engage themselves in the seminary for a couple of months, if they can't even live with us for quite a longer time. But it is a very enriching experience, Father.
Thank you. And it's not only the students who live together, right? You also have teachers living with you.
Exactly.
And how does that affect the environment? Living with the teachers, you're spending a lot of time together with your teachers.
With the teachers,
yes.
Yeah, it has been very helpful, specifically to me, because when I am exposed to different questions while taking the academic courses, I have the opportunity here to reflect the questions to the teachers and hearing their point of view and hearing their experience. That means we have like a continuous discussions with the teachers, and also communication with the teachers, and that will help the student to improve. And also that does mean that there is no gap between the teacher and the students. There is indeed, but we are really, really blessed to have the teachers, specifically the priest teachers, living with us, specifically during this tough time, COVID time. If I was not living with my fellow brothers and the priest and the teachers, it would have been very, very difficult time of my life. But living with them helped me a lot to cope up with these difficult times.
Thank you. A few more practical questions. Let's say somebody is interested in coming from abroad to stay. Is it possible to stay at the seminaries during the breaks as well, during the summer break, or is it like certain school environments where you're expected to vacate the premises during the longer breaks? Do you need to go back to your home country during the summers?
No, we are not supposed to go or to leave the premise during shorter or longer breaks. We have the possibility or the opportunity to go or visit our families. It is not restricted, but we are not legally forced, or there is no regulation which is imposed to leave the seminary during the longer breaks. We instead, for example, during, as I mentioned earlier, I'm almost wrapping up my second year studies, and I had spent the last summer here in the seminary, and it was we continued the regular activities during the breaks as well. So it's not like the activities that are taking place are not only subjected to the academic year. It should be applicable all year long and also after leaving the seminary, in fact. So there is no regulation which states that the student need to leave the premise during breaks, but they instead encourage us to stay and also continue living as we have been living during the academic year. And also they provide their generous support as well during that time.
Thank you.
I think our host is just frozen a little bit. So let's continue and speak a little bit about admission to the programs. To be admitted to the Bachelor program, we require that the student has fulfilled what we call the gymnasium in Sweden, or it would be in our countries high school. So, and also that there is enough English, that I can provide a certificate that they have passed a TOEFL test or equivalent test in English, or that they can prove in other ways that their English is sufficient enough. When it comes to the professional programs, especially the Pastoral-Pedagogical program, we require often that the students also provide a personal letter and they are interviewed before they start the program. So we admit the students based on their personal qualifications and not just on their papers from previous studies. And now our host is with us again, Serafim.
Yes, I'm sorry, my internet connection is intermittent here. I had just a couple of more questions for you and then a question for Sally before we move on to discuss the master's program. And it was the question of cost. We heard that there's no tuition fee for the academic program, but when it comes to staying at the seminary, what could prospective students expect in terms of cost for financing?
We provide, for all students in the first 2 years, we provide a kind of scholarship, which means that they don't need to pay the full amount of money for what it costs to eat and live at the seminaries. So they pay approximately half of the costs in most of the seminaries. That's a bit of a different things between the seminaries. But basically, most of the seminaries have a reduced cost for the first 2 years. We also offer the possibility to stay even beyond the first year if there is an opening for a place, for example. But then often it costs more to stay beyond this first 2 years in the seminaries. But we provide assistance for finding opportunities to live with the help of families and the parishes for the third and fourth year of bachelor and professional programs.
Sally, now I know your Swedish is very good. You've learned very good Swedish, but do students need to learn Swedish in order to study in Sweden and to study on these programs?
Well, most of our programs are in English and most of our literature is in English. If I'm going to recommend that they will study Swedish, it's to cooperate in the society and integrate in the Swedish society while they're living 4 years here. Otherwise, it's mostly in English, so it's not a need in that case, not a requirement.
Thank you. And Michael, one final question then about the relation between the bachelor's program and the pastoral-pedagogical program. You said that students are expected to be connected to the seminary, but if one wants to begin studying online, is that possible? Is it possible to study completely online to begin with, and then to phase over later in the program to study on campus?
When it comes to the pastoral pedagogical program, you have to be on campus, except for during the pandemic, of course, but otherwise you have to be on campus because leadership training and pastoral formation cannot be done online. That doesn't work. But we offer the bachelor program both online or on campus, so you can choose. Let's say that you start online in the bachelor program. You will be earning those credits, and you don't need to make the course on campus later on. We accept that students can come and they can have intensive studies for a year in the seminary, doing the practical liturgics and pastoral formation. And then some students, they study part or most of the years in the bachelor program online. That's a possibility. But the pastoral formation and the pedagogical formation has to be taken on campus. That's a requirement we have.
What are the requirements then to start studying at the bachelor's?
And when you froze, I took this up and explained.
Okay. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, well, then we can move on. I'm going to ask you then to move on to talk about the master's program, and maybe also we won't spend so much time on that, but we do have something called the pre-master, which could be a bridge to the master program. If it's relevant there, if you could mention something about that as well.
First of all, the 3 cycles. We have the bachelor is the first cycle, and the master is the second cycle, and research is the third cycle. The relation between these 3 cycles is that during the bachelor, you gain the tool, so to say, in order to be able to become a scholar. It doesn't mean that you become a scholar after your first 3 years of a bachelor, but you have the tools to explore the academic world and to become a scholar. During the master, you use these tools that you have learned during the bachelor cycle, and you become a scholar. So what happens during the research day is not that you become a scholar as a doctoral student. No, what happens during the third cycle is that you're integrated with the international academic society. So in the first, you gain the tools. In the second, you become a scholar. In the third, you become integrated in the international academic society. So the master level, then, that's actually to become a scholar. That's the focus. So if the first cycle is more like acquiring the tools that you need for working on the master level, it's a master level that turns you into a scholar. And if you're reading the professional program, Religious Educator, it means that you make use of your scholarly ability in order to use that for the service of parishes, dioceses, or patriarchates, or as a teacher later on at universities. That's what you're gaining as a master student. So that means that the difference between the bachelor and the master is that it's focused primarily on the master level, on the scholarly targets. That's the difference. And to have an access to the master level, it means that you need to have the tools. You have to have acquired the tools. And it requires that you have a bachelor in theology or a bachelor in humanities, but at least with 60 credits in theology. And that's why we offer these pre-master programs. That's for those that have another kind of bachelor in humanities, but they don't have enough theology. And the pre-master program, therefore, is 1 year, 60 credits for those that have studied political science, social sciences, or other fields within humanities, history, for example, but they need theology in their bachelor in order to enter the master level in theology.
And in these 60 credits, if you look at the website, it mentions also a thesis. How strict is that? Do you need to have written a thesis within religion, or is it will it be assessed on an individual basis?
Formally, we require a thesis within religion, but we can also admit students with a thesis in other fields, but they have to provide some kind of evidence that they are having the tools, so that they are equipped to work within the field of religious studies. Because basically, you need to have the tools before you enter into the master program. But if you have written, for example, a bachelor thesis in history, often that is enough, because then it means that you know the historical critical method. That is very much the basic method we use on the master level. So that's a requirement that we have the tools, that we're equipped enough to become a scholar on the master level.
If we move on then to discussing the content of the master's program, I could start by asking then, if we've considered the skills necessary, but now looking specifically at the content, does a student miss out on anything by going directly to the master's program? We have lots of courses in the bachelor program. What's the, you talked about these 4 sources and that this logic is carried through the different levels.
And the most important difference between the Pastoral-Pedagogical program on the within the first cycle, so to say, is that if you want to become a priest, I would argue that the master level is not necessary. It's not a necessity to have a master level becoming a priest. It's much more important that you acquire the understanding of how to use critique as a vehicle for progression, that you have mastered the combination of a personal position within the field of theology, together with understanding the tools needed for reading various books and materials and so on, and the sources. That's why we have placed the Pastoral-Pedagogical program on the first cycle, on the bachelor level. But if you want to advance, especially if you want to advance as a teacher, you need the master level in order to become a scholar. And that's completely different from the vocation as a priest. The scholar level, which comes with the master, that's about generating knowledge, to create new results, to interpret the sources in a new way and provide your community with new knowledge. And that's where you need to be a scholar. And a teacher often needs to be a scholar, because generating knowledge and integrating knowledge are two so-called perspectives that are necessary for your community to grow and your students to grow.
And if you're already a priest who is looking to deepen or broaden your theological studies, what's the relationship? What relation between the bachelor and the master's?
On the bachelor, we provide the sources, and in Pastoral-Pedagogical program, we provide the techniques for how to give a sermon, how to teach in a community. But on the master level, we provide the student with a capability of not just teaching, but to do research also, to understand the depth of the sources, to reveal perspectives that previously were unknown. That's something that you cannot do after a bachelor level. And as a priest, to be able to participate in a broader community of scholars, where you can unravel and reveal the new perspectives of the sources of tradition, that means that you also provide your community with the ability to develop. And that's something more than just being a priest. And certainly you don't need to be a priest to assist the community in these perspectives, but it provides an important part, it provides an important aspect for the church that priests are educated as scholars. Because if we don't have enough priests as scholars, the priesthood or the clergy will become an obstacle for the development of a community. So we do encourage priests to continue their studies on the master level, but we don't encourage everyone to do it. But some priests should continue on the master level. That's very important.
Thank you. And if you could then tell us a little bit about the content of the master program.
The master program follows the same path as in Eastern Christian Studies, follows the same path as we have on the bachelor level. It's 4 sources that are focused. They are repeated during the first semester. So you study, during the first semester, you study biblical studies, patristic studies, liturgical studies, and ecclesiological studies again, but with an increased complexity. But then you combine them in the second semester, which means that you work on see how they interact with each other and how the object of Eastern Christian traditions needs various perspectives, not just one. And then you choose one perspective to make a deeper study in by doing elective courses that finalize in a master thesis during the second year, which is a full semester work, where you choose either perspective of biblical studies, patristic studies, liturgical studies, or ecclesiological studies. And that field will be the field that you will develop in, even on research level.
We do offer some very interesting programs. I mean, we have new fields in our other master's programs. And in all 3 programs, there is a certain amount of credits which are elective. So if somebody is having trouble deciding between these programs, do you have any recommendations? I'm thinking you might start out studying Eastern Christian Studies and then do some electives from our other programs, and then find that you're interested in pursuing something more along those lines in your final thesis. So what would you say could be the relationship between these programs, these master's programs which we offer?
We have 3 programs. One is within Eastern Christian Studies, one is within International Relations and Ecumenism, and one is within Religion, Politics, and Democracy. If you, for example, find out that during your liturgical studies that you would like to change and move towards religion, politics, and democracy, for example, you have to add some courses in order to continue within the second year, but basically they are interchangeable within certain limits. And if, for example, if you find that your ecclesiological studies amounts to, you would like to work on international relations and ecumenism, it's very easy. Then you can just switch to that field without any major problems. So I would say that you can change your direction, but within certain limits.
Thank you. And then talking about the scholarly environment in the community, both between students and teachers, and the relationship of the Eastern Christian Studies department to the rest of EHS. What are the opportunities for collaboration or between these different departments, the different programs? What is the role of the doctoral students in the programs? We're not such a big department.
On the research level, the doctoral student chooses his or her own perspective. So we don't have 3 different fields of studies. We only have one field, Eastern Christian Studies as such. You can choose the perspective of historical sources, you can choose the perspective of contemporary international relations, or you can choose the perspective of contemporary political relations within civic society. But when it comes to participation in a wider research environment, all master students participate in the research seminar together with the doctoral students. So it means that they follow the research seminar, and they also provide their thesis in the end to the research seminar. So they will be doing their final defense within the context of a research seminar. So it means that the master level is actually to become a scholar, and the best way to become a scholar is to participate with scholars.
Thank you. I wonder if you could comment also on relations with other institutions in the world and possibilities or opportunities between our department and other departments within the Orthodox world.
Our teachers has a very broad international network. Our teachers in biblical studies, they participate within a broad field of biblical studies, especially concerned with the interpretation of the Bibles within the Eastern Christian traditions and how they have been translated into various new fields like in Ge'ez and Syriac and so on. Our patristic scholars are already participating in broad networks of historical studies. Our Professor Samuel Rubensson, for example, he is one of the recognized great patristic scholars, especially concerning the early church. And international relations and ecumenism, which concerns our ecclesiological field, because the professor of international relations and ecumenism is also professor of ecclesiology within our program, which means that there's a broad network of scholars participating in our programs. Also, we as an institution is one of those institutions that carries the weight of various international bodies within the Eastern Christian world as of now. And we're the only school that provides studies in Tewahedo studies in the Western world at the moment. And we're one of the few schools providing Syriac Christian studies. And in Western Europe, we're one of the few schools that provides studies within Eastern Christian traditions as such. So,
if you've visited our webpage, you may have seen this distinction between master and magister, one-year master. What is the difference between those two?
For those who wants to just pursue, for those who want to continue with research studies, in Sweden we offer them to just make 1 year on the master level and then 4 years on the research level. While those that would like to become scholars as such without the research level, we provide them with 2 years of studies, because that's what's needed to become a scholar. You need 2 years on the master level. But for those who want to become scholars and take a PhD, we provide them with 1 year. That's the magister level. So I would recognize and recommend that if you would like to become a scholar, you should make 2 years of studies. But if you want to enter the research program here in Sweden, we offer a 1 year master program, and that's called Magister in Sweden.
Is this an online program, or do you need to study on campus?
Both the 2 year master program and the 1 year magister program is possible to study online here within our field.
What about financing opportunities? Are there any scholarships for master students?
As of now, we only provide scholarship for professional degree programs, and not on the master programs or the bachelor programs as such. Then you have to enroll either in the Pastoral-Pedagogical program or in the Religious Educator program, which is more advanced and more, let's say, intensive than the other programs.
And if you're interested in pursuing doctoral studies, are there any differences in what to expect in this context here in Sweden compared to maybe the way things work in other countries when it comes to financing and so on?
Normally in other countries, you need to make the 2-year master program in order to enter into the research level. Because usually the research level is considered as 3-year program, but here in Sweden it's 4 years. That means that you only need to do 1 year on the master level in order to enter. But if you want to compete for a position in a research program, often you have to do 2 years in order to be eligible in competition, not to be eligible to enter, but to compete.
Okay, thank you, Michael. We're soon drawing to a close here before we open up for questions. I just turn again to Sally. If I remember correctly, you said that you're starting your master's studies now. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you just started?
No, this is my second term.
Your second term.
Yeah.
Okay. For those who will be working at the same time as they study, is this a viable combination? Is the structure of the program such that it's possible to combine with other studies or other work?
Well, the program basically, as Michael said, it's you can study on distance and online. And it's basically also like you're the person who's responsible for managing your time and to read your books. And I think this is something mostly expected from students who are studying masters, to know how to manage their time. So it's really possible to do that, to study and work at the same time. But this is from my experience, because I do work as well together with studying.
And what about the actual times and when it comes to lectures and so on? Let's say I live in a time zone which is far away. Is it possible to actually follow the studies online? Are the lectures generally recorded, or are they live? Do you need to get up at 2 in the morning to follow a lecture?
Up till now, most of our teachers record the lectures and post them on our Canvas, our platform for studies and for literature. So you can like watch the lectures all over again all the time. Even we have these public lectures that is sometimes a part of our education. It's also found on our YouTube channel in St. Ignatios, so everybody can watch it, and students, outside students. So we're not having, I live in Sweden, but I'm not having a problem in timing.
Okay, thank you. And then just a couple of final questions then for Michael. English is, of course, the lingua franca of the department. What are the requirements, language requirements, to study on our different programs?
For both Bachelor and Master, we require that you have a certificate of your English ability, either TOEFL or similar test that makes it possible for you to follow our studies in English. But we also provide support for students, especially within the professional programs, Religious Educator and the Pastoral-Pedagogical program, where you can substitute some of the courses for English, but it's individually applied, and usually you're required to have English before you start. But we do some exceptions when it comes to English, so they can study more English during their studies.
What about the language of the final thesis in the bachelor's?
As of now, it has been possible to write it in Swedish or in English, but on the master level, usually we require it to be done in English.
Thank you so much for all this information. Before we open up for questions, I would also ask you if there are any perspectives which you, all of you, feel perhaps you'd like to comment on, which haven't been brought up in the questions. Okay. If not, then I would invite questions from either the participants in the in the discussions or our guests on the online forum. We don't have so many live guests here right now. As we said, this is going to be posted online so that people can consult it afterwards. But if we have any questions, you can feel free to either place them directly or to write them in the chat, and then we direct them to the appropriate speaker. If there are no questions, then I would like to thank you all very much for participating and for giving us a thorough understanding of both the program structure itself, but also, and perhaps more importantly, the underlying logic of the program and the personal experience from the perspective of the students of actually having gone through this progression which the programs are designed to provide. So thank you so much once again for participating, and for those of you who are participating as guests, please feel free to recommend anybody you may know who is interested in these fields to also have a look at this video and also to consult our webpage. Also, I want to reiterate what Sally mentioned here, that we are providing a series of public lectures where our professors take it in cycles to hold lectures which are available to the general public and which give an insight into both the staff and the work of our teachers in these departments. Currently, the theme is ecclesiology. These lectures, the lecture schedule is available on the website. Also, they are recorded and published, so they're available from last term as well. And we hope to build up a good catalog of lectures which will showcase the work of the department. So thank you so much, and we look forward to hearing from you. Also, if you have questions which you come up with afterwards, you're free to contact us through the channels provided by the website. You will find the staff list and more information there. So thank you so much.